Do you think public school is still relevant nowadays, especially in the midst of pandemic where all teaching and learning processes are being conducted online? Maybe this is the best time for parents out there to be considering homeschooling. My research focuses on the pros and cons of homeschooling. In other words, the advantages and the disadvantages. One of the advantages of homeschooling is that it helps to develop children's personality. My research exposed that children who is homeschooled tend to have more positive behavior and good self-value, such as responsible and independence. This is because children who is homeschooled believe that they have their own authority to their own education. Secondly, the advantages of homeschooling can be seen that it brings family together. Why? Because being homeschooled means that you are surrounded by your family, siblings, parents, like your siblings and your parents, which shows that all of the activities, tasks, learning, teaching and learning processes, extracurricular activities are being conducted at home. With whom? With the people, with your own family. And the people are your family, which means that indirectly it can strengthen the relationship between your family members and brings the family together. And the third advantages of homeschooling is the most crucial part, where it allows academic flexibility. I think these advantages would concern the most parents with special needs children such as autism, ADHD, slow learner and fast learner, where with homeschooling they have their full authority to create their own syllabus and guideline and timeline for their children that suits the capability of their children. And not to forget, homeschooling will also have its own disadvantages. One of the advantages is that it increased the financial cost. Why? Because all of the financial is from A to Z is handled by the parents themselves. There's no financial aid from the government or any private sector. Secondly, children who is homeschooled tend to have lack of social interaction with the outside world. Homeschooling is just at home. It doesn't expose children to the outside world, and they don't mingle around with any peers around their age. Probably their sibling is just older or younger than them, and the adults that they mingle around is just their parents. And thirdly, disadvantages of homeschooling is that it lack of qualified educators. Why? Because most teachers or most educators would prefer to serve in public school or private school because of the benefit that they get. Homeschooling does not provide benefits the same as private and public sector, and there's no holiday, and homeschool teachers tend to be bounded with the schedules of the children, means that they need to follow the children's schedule. Maybe it's up to the parents themselves to evaluate whether homeschooling is the best choice for their children or not. That's it from me. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum and very good day to all. Myself Ghulam Muhammad Mohiuddin and my matric number is 19092094. Currently I am doing Bachelor of Computer Science at Albukhary International University. Today I would like to share the idea of research topic which is very significant at the current situation. So the topic of my research paper is the impact of COVID-19 on sustainability determinants looking at the global trend. For the last 2 years until today, the world has failed to defeat COVID-19. The COVID-19 pandemic is the biggest challenge facing humanity after 1918 flu pandemic. The pandemic also poses a massive challenge to achievement to a sustainable development goals. Hence, the objective of this study to examine the impact of COVID-19 pandemics on sustainability determinants. I have done through a literature review, look up further about the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on sustainable development. Since its outbreak early January in 2020 in China's Wuhan city, until now there are 100 million of positive cases are found in 250 countries around the world. From these 100 million, 2 million deaths have been attributed to COVID-19. Primarily, a health crisis is now rapidly turning into the economic crisis due to the unprecedented restriction on the movement of the people as well as the economic activities in the form of worldwide lockdown. The World Bank analysis has argued that depending on the scale on economic shock, COVID-19 is likely to push 40 to 60 million people extreme poverty, with the base estimate being 49 billion. The Asian Development Bank ADB has predicted that the COVID-19 pandemic could cost the global economy between 5.8 trillion to 8.8 trillion Markin dollar, or 6.4% to 9.7% of global GDP. Global employment could fall to between 158 million to 242 million jobs. Their overall COVID-19 pandemic has brought a huge negative impact on sustainable development determinants. The methodology of this study considered quantitative COVID-19 dashboard data with the sustainable determinants. Old age group people has exposed air pollution and the countries with the most international travelers. Results show that the country with the aging pollution were the more exposed to COVID-19, and it is the interaction term lost the most international travelers. It also analyzed the aging pollution and the interaction with the people exposed to air pollution are also vulnerable to COVID-19, but marginally lesser than the former. However, their behavior varies from country to country, making room future study analyze more deeply analyzed. Therefore, the study suggests that there is a need to reassessment to epic risk management to deal with this, and the future unforeseen countries consider sustainable development goals. That's it. Thank you.
Will Islamic marketing survive in today's world? Islamic marketing, which means we are bringing the Islamic principle to the marketing concept. There are three issues to tackle in order to survive in today's world. The first one is halal issue, the second one is legality, and the third one is branding issue. Halal issue. When we talk about halal, we are not talking about only about the food, but all the procedures, input, materials, and everything from production until product delivery should be halal, should be Sharia compliant, and also eco-friendly, because in Islam it bans to harm the environment. Businesses must comprehend the true meaning of halal. The second issue that need to be tackled by the marketers is legality, which means applying the Islamic principle into the modern law. This regulation should be seen by the marketers as crucial in order to attract the Muslim market. The third one is the branding issue. Islamic branding defined as branding that is Islamically compliant and adhere to Sharia principle. Not all brands strictly follow halal standard. The challenges associated with the concept of Islamic marketing in today's world are many, and in order to overcome them, it is essential that we try to make the marketplace more adaptive to the Islamic concept of doing business. The reason behind this is not only to enhance the marketing of Islamic product, but also to increase the efficiency of practicing businesses as well. Future research should focus on examining the issues on more in-depth analysis and review of the extant literature on the topic of Islamic marketing in general and issues faced by the Islamic marketing in particular. Apart from the three factors, there may be more issues that need to be explored, and this can also be one of the limitations of this study. Thank you.
Hi, I always loved to play a game since I was a kid, and because of that, I said that I love to learn something new about technology. Yeah, speaking about technology, technology is always growing faster and faster in the recent years. Like for example, it took roughly 10,000 years from handwriting to printing press, but only it took 500 years from printing press to an email. Now, from that example, it seems like we're kind of in the new age. Yeah, the age of AI, artificial intelligence. And let me tell you something about it. Okay, Google, tell me about artificial intelligence.
According to Wikipedia, artificial intelligence is intelligence demonstrated by machines, as opposed to the natural intelligence displayed by humans or animals.
And that is the definition of artificial intelligence from the artificial intelligence itself. Now it seems like it's kind of incredible, right? Artificial intelligence, or AI, has been developing rapidly in the recent years. Like for example, about software development, hardware implementation, and the application of AI in our real life. But in this video, I just want to tell you something about the important role
of AI in the healthcare or biomedicine areas. For the first application of AI in biomedicine area is AI for assisted living for elderly and disabled people. Let me tell you something about Rudo. Rudo is an AI that can help blind people to work and live together with sight people. For the next example is AI in biomedical information processing. In this area, AI can help doctor or patient to find their answer for their problem in the healthcare area. And for the third application is AI in biomedical research. Yeah, AI can help doctor to find a research about some kind of disease that maybe they never find before. And for the last application that AI can do and can help people in the healthcare area is that AI can help to diagnostic of a disease. Yeah, in this area, AI can help health professional like a doctor or nurse to find an answer or to find early diagnostic of many kind of disease. And from all of the examples that I has been given before in this video, it feels like AI is amazing, right? That can help people, help doctor in healthcare area. But it is not because of the greatness of AI, but also AI can help in the healthcare area. It's because of the complex problem that can occur in the healthcare area. And of course, I hope that AI can more improve and upgrade in the next future for the better of our next generation. My name is Eka Wahyuditya, and thanks for watching.
Today's topic is corruption. Corruption is a dishonest behavior by those in position of power, such as manager or government officials. Corruption can include giving or accepting bribes or inappropriate gifts, double dealing, under-the-table transaction, manipulating election, and diverting funds. Effect of corruption on a country. 1. It reduces foreign transaction and domestic investment. 2. Increases inequality and poverty. 3. It raises the number of freeloaders on the economic. 4. It distorts and exploits public investment and reduces public revenue. Causes of corruption. What causes corruption? 1. With rare exceptions, low-income country. 2. Most countries have closed economy. 3. The influence of religion is visible. Protestant countries have far lower level of corruption. 4. Low media freedom. And 5. A relatively low level of education. Political and economic environment. The phenomenon of corruption is strongly influenced by the political and economic environment. The more is the economic activity in the country regulated and limited, the higher the authority and the power of officials in the decision making, and the greater the possibility of corruption. Since individuals are willing to pay or offer payment in order to avoid restrictions, a greater potential of corruption is especially there where the officials are under the regulation, giving the opportunity to decide on the basis of discretion. The impact of corruption on the economy. 1. Corruption increases the volume of public investment. 2. In the presence of corruption, the investments are smaller, as entrepreneurs are aware that they will have to bribe the officials or even give them profit share for a successful implementation of the business. Due to this increased cost, the entrepreneurs are not interested in investing. Stop corruption. There's a quotation from the Bible that says, "Do not accept a bribe For a brow blinds those who see and twist the words of innocence. Stay away from personal interests and influence more on the interests of your community, government, school, entities, and institutions. Let's bring in transparency. Let's stop corruption. Thank you so much.
With the recent pandemic situation in Malaysia, many Malaysians are struggling to have a stable income, and with the movement control order, MCO, plus with the home-based learning for the Malaysian student and their parent with the work from home style, people are in need to have devices like tablet, smartphone, and laptop. And quite unfortunate for some of them, they are not able to buy it. Even though there are some activity or program from the government like Jaringan Prihatin, but it was not enough to actually to fulfill all the need of the Malaysian. What I'm trying to propose today is instead of giving charity, um, of doing this program on the one-off program, I'm proposed to do a social enterprise activity in Malaysia. So what is different between charity and social enterprise? Charity basically is one kind of donation that we given that's just like do by the individual like you, like NGO and government, which is the Jaringan Platin. It's a one kind of for the people, for the specific people. Not all people can enjoy it. But with the social enterprise, with the certain reason, especially like doing this to sell the devices to all nations with the cheap price can be achieved. Why? Because when you're doing social enterprise, all investors that invest in this business, they will just get their investment back, dividend back, but they will not gain any profit, and the business itself will not gain any profit. And with the business growing and growing around Malaysia, uh, and more people can enjoy this benefit, and so all people can benefit from the social enterprise approach. So I suggest that social enterprise establishment as a model to cater all the need of the Malaysian, especially during movement control order. That's all for me. Assalamualaikum.
Teenage pregnancy is a pregnancy of a girl at the age of 19 or younger. A girl can get pregnant at any age if she has begun her menstrual cycle and have an affair with a man. During her pregnancy, she may firstly miss her period, but sometimes she may receive a very light period. But that does not mean that she is not pregnant, because you can receive a light bleeding at the early stage of pregnancy. Some symptoms of pregnancies include vomiting, tiredness, and pain in the lower abdomen. Pregnant teenagers face some health risks and complications due to their immature body, such as high blood pressure, difficult labor, and birth complications. High blood pressure can also harm the kidney or even be fatal for the mother or baby. They are also at risk to mental health such as depression, intense stress, and pressure to become a parent. Teenage pregnancy can also have negative social and economic effect on girls, their family and community. Unmarried pregnant teenagers may face stigma or rejection by parents and peers, such as can make them feel isolated and do not get much support from family and friends. The only way a girl cannot get pregnant is to get away from a sexual intercourse. But however, there are other methods of avoiding a pregnancy. Some people organize a counseling program for a teenager to help them prevent a pregnancy by providing information on birth control and how to prevent themselves from doing sexual intercourse. Teenage pregnancy are a global problem, but mostly occur in a poorer and marginalized community. Many girls face intense pressure to marry early and become a mother while they are still a child. Teenage pregnancy increases within a girls when they are denied the right to make decisions about their sexual and reproductive health and well-being. Girls must be able to make their own decisions about their body and future, and give them the right to have proper education as well as think properly about their life.
Hi, my name is Aryanta Rahmana. I'm a student of the Bachelor of Elementary Education here at Albukhary International University. And this is my 3-minute thesis video on effective generative music in video games written by Kale Platt. Well, video game music shouldn't be possible. You see, music is linear. Piece of music starts at the beginning, goes through the middle and gets to the end, and even if it is played multiple times, it will do the same thing. And mostly games, on the other hand, are interactive. One player might turn left at the end of the hallway, another might turn right, and the question is, how can we write a single linear piece of music that in any way feels like it fits with and goes with the infinite possibilities of gameplay? Well, there is a technique for that. It is called adaptive music. It comes mainly from the games industry. Basically, refers to composer can write music where they can actually cut up and rearrange those pieces so that they somewhat match what is happening in the game. And this is an incredibly powerful tool for helping music match gameplay. But it does have a couple of drawbacks. The first drawback is that writing adaptive music takes a lot of extra time and work compared to writing a single linear piece. And secondly, the composer might feel that their expressive range is reduced. So from this paper, they are trying to use a way called computational creativity to address some of these issues. It basically refers to the use of artificial intelligence models and systems to address creative tasks such as creating a painting or, in this case, writing a piece of music. And these systems have a couple of advantages to help shore up the weaknesses of adaptive music. It can write a music very fast depending on the system, and it have a little more freedom navigating the possibility space than a human composer might. In theory, at least, the only question remaining really is, how can we get a video game to talk to the music generator? And for that, we use emotion you see in the film. And music is often used to enhance the emotional impact of a film, and we want to do the same for video games as well. In conclusion, based on the theory, the end result of this will be a system where the user can play a video game, and the music will react to match perfectly the emotions expressed by the game. So, thank you for your time, and my name is Aryanta Rahman.
There is a phrase that says practice makes perfect. And there's research from Dr. K. Anders Erickson from Florida State University has found that it takes around 10 years or 10,000 hours of practice to mastering something. Meanwhile, another research by Josh Kaufman has concluded that at least we need 20 hours of practice to just learn a new skill. We always believe that in order to be good at something, we need to practice. The more we practice, the more we could get better performance and results. Undoubtedly, this side sticks with us whenever we go to study or learn something. However, we might just believe the idea of practice makes perfect, maybe just because it is doubt and it is the only way we know to learn something from time to time. But does more practice hours really help someone to learn and get better performance in the end? There is research from the University of the Incarnate Word Rosenberg School of Optometry in San Antonio, Texas, that analyzed the correlation between practice hour and the final grade of the 130 optometry students. So, the research was conducted by comparing the recorded practice hours that were taken by the students before the final assessment with their final grade. And the final assessment actually were held into two schedules, where the first half of the students were having the final assessment in week 12 and the second half in week 14. So that the research actually was analyzing two groups of students, where one of the group had extra week to practice before the final assessments. And as the result, the record shows that the students with additional marks and more practice hours before the test have higher marks. Eventually, it is very clear that the research helped us to clarify that certainly practice makes perfect. And in this research, we could see that more practice hours can help students to get greater performance and higher grade in final assessment. And as the conclusions of this research, if we really want to learn something and be competent at it, we should ensure that we will have more time to practice and sharpen our skill frequently so that we can have better performance and better results. However, the amount of practice hours is not the only aspect that contributes to achieving our learning goals and better performance. Besides that, we also should consider the effectiveness and the quality of our learning and our practice.
Hi everyone, it's me Amin Mujtaba, student at Albukhary International University from Afghanistan. Have you ever thought how you can make impossible thing possible? It is a question in almost mind of world population. And today here I am to depicting you some of the ways and tips for making impossible thing possible. If you look back to the history, people were believed that it's impossible for a human to run a mile in 4 minutes. Runners, they tried and tried to break the records, but it was impossible for them because their negative belief was. And nowadays, or recently, students at their early age of their schools are able to break the record. From here we know that everything is possible if we try. Okay, now let me depict you some of the ways and tips for making impossible thing possible. Number 1, your negative belief is powerful. If you believe that something is impossible, that belief will erode your confidence and it turns to your self-fulfilling prophecy. Number 2, your positive belief is even more powerful than you ever thought. If you believe that something is possible, you will find means to make it happen. For proof, let's back to the history. President of United States, Mr. John Kennedy, he was believed that it's impossible to send the people to the moon, as well as Mr. Gandhi. He had believed that it is impossible to overthrow the British occupation from India without any violence. But it's all the negative beliefs. But nowadays we are seeing that all those things are believed or possible. Yeah? Number 3, authority figures don't know always the best. If a person with authority comes to you and tells you that you cannot do anything anymore, you are finished, it was all your job, and these are all the words that will bring down your confidence. And if you listen, probably you will go down. For example, if I meet a patient and tell him or tell her that you cannot recover anymore, it was all finished. Probably the confidence that he had or she had on herself or herself, it will gone. There will nothing remain for himself or for herself. Number 4, believe what's possible. It is the first step to one fearlessly reaching goal. Fearlessness is a state of the mind. It is not genetic trait. You can acquire it and strengthen it. Start to build courage yourself now by reminding yourself what all amazing feats you have ever accomplished in your life. If you're not yet, start to build and write it down. Write it down, keep a spirit, always work on that one. Never give up. Thank you so much. Have a nice day.
The world today is fully used of technology, and most of technology consume electricity. However, electricity can be used in unlimited places. On the other hand, it cannot be touched or bring it along with us because it's so dangerous. To solve the problem, an Italian pioneer has invented a thing that can store electricity, and it can bring it with us everywhere. It's called battery. The battery was invented in 1800 by Alessandro Volta. He is the first person who discovered the battery. But why the battery is important in technology? Let's have a look at an example. Imagine if a mobile phone did not use the battery, what happened? We know that mobile phone use the electrical circuit to run the program, to run the system. So it requires electricity. However, electricity can be used in a specific places and it cannot be moved too far. It is only can be used inside the house or on the table where we can charge the mobile phone while using it. So, when we go outside of the house, we cannot bring the mobile phone with us because we cannot bring the electricity, and it's so dangerous we cannot put it in our pocket. It means we can only use inside the house or a place that has electricity. So the world will become a passive place for people if we don't have the battery. Therefore, the battery has changed the world completely. It brings the world to the flexible places for people to live. It is used to store electricity and bring safety to the people who use it to run the technology. It is can be touched, and it is so easy to use, which we can bring it with us everywhere, and we can put it in our pocket. Because of the battery, people can use many types of technology in one hand with one world. The battery is the power of the world.
For years, Somalis have worked hard to liberate themselves from the colonialists such as Britain, Italy, and French. At that time, the hope of Great Somalia came anew. Somalia was independent between 1960 and 1969, and it was considered an example of democracy in Africa. 3 decades after its independence, the collapse of Somalia government occurred, and the increased burden came to both people and the natural resources. The economy was hit hard by the loss of key construction and infrastructure institutions. It was believed that between 350,000 people and 80% of all social works, such as schools, hospitals, and roads, had been demolished. In my research, I investigate the factors that caused the collapse of Somalia government in 1991 in both perspective of foreign authors and Somali authors. To begin with the foreign authors, there were 2 main factors that caused the collapse of the government, namely dictatorship and clans opposing the government. In the perspective of Somali authors, they believe that competition for natural resources and power were the main factors of the collapse of the Somalian government. Firstly, dictatorship. The dictatorship of Mohammed Siad Barre, who was the commander and chief of the Somali armed and military forces triggered the collapse of the government. Although there were lots of developments going on, but he denied democracy. Later on, armed troops organized themselves and they wanted to step him down. On the other hand, clans were competing for power to conquer the country, and also they were competing for natural resources such as water, livestock, and grassland, because in the past Somali nomads fought over these to conquer the country. To conclude, lots of trials of reconciliations were made by both external organizations who interest the Somalia government and the internal Somalia elderly people to help peace talks between the clans and the troops, but the talks ended up failing.
The COVID-19 pandemic and the lockdown has taken the world by storm. The physiological impact of COVID-19 and lockdown among the university students in Malaysia. The impact of COVID-19 on people's mental health is already extremely concerning. Social isolation, fear of contagion, and loss of family members is compounded by the distress caused by loss of income and even employment. In Malaysia, COVID-19 was first detected in January 2020. Cases recorded then were the scare and mainly limited to tourists. Local outbreaks started to appear in March 2020. The main cluster was connected to the spiritual gathering Tabligh Jamaat in late February and early March, culminating in a sudden and sharp upsurge in local cases and those exported to the neighboring countries. Right after the outbreak, Malaysia took steps to control the rapid spread of COVID-19. That's when the country was locked down, which extremely affects to the students, university students in Malaysia, in terms of emotionally and anxiety. The empirical evidence from those studies indicates that 28% of the students experienced minimal to moderate, marked to severe, and most extreme anxiety levels, respectively, during the COVID-19 pandemic and lockdown period. To mitigate anxiety levels among the students, the Center for Disease Control has proposed some guidelines to minimize repeatedly watching and reading and listening news stories on COVID-19, specifically unreliable sources of social media. Maintain health, exercise adequate hours of sleep, and keep your mind stress-free by virtual connecting with friends and family members in order to be safe from the anxiety. And finally, take time to unwind and indulge in activities one enjoys as suggested. It helps to feel that everyone is in this together. Thank you so much.
Ebola virus. Ebola virus is a disease caused by a virus. It's rare but deadly virus that causes fever, diarrhea, body ache, and sometimes bleeding inside and outside of body. After entering the body, it kills cells, making some of them explode, and it rots the immune system, causes heavy bleeding inside the body, and damages almost every organ. It will also causes the levels of blood clotting cells to drop, so that will lead to a severe and uncontrollable bleeding. So where did the Ebola get the name of Ebola? In Africa, there is a country there, the Republic Democratic of Congo. In that country, the Ebola was first appeared in a place there. The name of that place is near to a river. The name of that river is Ebola. So that's why they gave the name of Ebola to disease. Before the Ebola was known as Ebola hemorrhagic fever, but now it's known as Ebola virus. So, how can we be contaminated by Ebola? Well, that is clear. We can be contaminated by Ebola from direct contact with an infected person's body fluids, or from direct contact with the things that the person who has been affected touching. Those who taking care for a sick person or bury someone who has died from the Ebola disease often get it. Another way to get Ebola include touching contaminated needles or surfaces. So the symptom of the disease is diarrhea, headache, body pain, bleeding inside and outside of body. Because after getting worse, the person that has been affected by it will vomit by blood, and the blood will come from his nose, air, and his mouth. There's not any cure for now for Ebola, but there are a vaccine to prevent having the virus, but there's not the vaccine. Now the medicine to cure the virus. Thank you.
COVID-19, which was first identified in December 2019 in Wuhan, China. The disease is not only causing global health emergency, but also global economic slowdown. Malaysia has implemented the Movement Control Order, or MCO, started on 18 March 2020 as a preventive measure to control the COVID-19 virus in this country. After the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus and the implementation of the MCO, a study was conducted on the liquidity among micro entrepreneurs and how long their cash reserves would last. There were 650 responses of micro entrepreneurs from the M1 and M2 category. A statistical report result of the above survey is as follows. Most of the respondents, 50% involved in this study, are micro entrepreneurs who have been in business for more than 5 years. Their business, while 19% were half operational, only 5% operated their business full during the MCO. There are many contributing factors to this condition, some of which are follow. The first, they are in business to pay for groceries. The second, poor management of cash in business. Today, microloans are given as a stepping stone, especially for young people who wish to become successful entrepreneurship. The change in landscape is an encouragement from the government to create many more successful young people entrepreneurs in this country. Wherever the economy is prospering on in a state of crisis, allocation of funds by the government for micro loan are always available.
What China is doing in Africa. This video is all about how China has rushed into Africa by building a bunch of stuff like roads, railway, and ports. And all these projects are part of China's growing as an economy and as a superpower. So let me explain to you a little information about it. So as a country gets rich, you always start looking for an outward opportunity in terms of economically and as well as militarily. So 15 years ago, China was a very poor country with a huge population, and that is the belief China has started to use its population and open to the world as a workforce and cheap labor. So therefore, in my research, I have found that to create a relationship between China and Africa, China understands the easiest way that he can build this connection is an economic partnership between China and Africa. So in order to clearly understand, let's see the geopolitical motive in Africa. So if you see in Africa, all African countries are infested by China, except a small country called Swaziland. But the question is why China is doing this? What they are up to? The president of China has said they are doing all these things in the name of cooperation and friendship to solve African issue in an African way. For instance, China has built the fastest train system in Africa, which was spent $3.6 billion, which is the most expensive infrastructure that Kenya has since its independence. And now Kenya has to give back these loans into China. But the question is, what happens if these countries fail to give back these kind of debts into China? Will they lose their ports like what happened before? So there's a popular quote that John Abraham has said, there are two things that if you want to conquer a country, and one is by using a sword, and another one is using by a debt. And this much pretty applies here. Therefore, to conclude, all kind of investment that China is doing in Africa is because China wants to have an alliance as a growing and as a superpower. China, he wants to build this kind of alliance in Africa, which he will use later on. Thank you.
I've met people who refuse to use birth control because they believe it harms their fertility. In fact, after using hormonal birth control, such as IUDs, the pill, the patch, or the implant, a woman's monthly cycle can take many months to return to normal. However, there is little evidence that hormonal contraceptives have long-term effect on fertility. In this research, although the public accepted birth control more readily than it had before the Great Depression era, it nevertheless had negative connotations for many individuals, including a link to negative eugenics. Overpopulation is recognized as a major challenge to the development of third world countries. But birth control offers a means to limit it. If the birth rate in a third world country fell, then their economies could develop, which in turn contributed to a better world economy. Leaders in the movement believed that if birth control was presented as a way to better families, it would garner more support. When the federal government became more concerned about overpopulation, they promoted the use of birth control as a tool for limiting population growth. The movement's adaptability ensured its survival. but it never lost sight of its original goal of providing women with effective birth control methods that control their reproduction. The movement of birth control liberation began as a feminist movement during the early 20th century, when women organized and agitated their personal and individual autonomy rights. Depending on the political and economic climate, the birth control movement was a feminist and social movement at times. A woman's marital status had no influence on her to acquire birth control from a physician. Every woman who wanted and needed to regulate her reproduction had the legal right to do so. So, more clinics and educational activities should be provided to reach a bigger audience in order to make birth control movement acceptable and persuade more individuals to use it without hesitation. It should also not abandon other goals, such as providing family planning services, increasing women's reproductive health, or discovering more effective contraceptive technologies. Thank you.
Mental health can be interpreted as a mental, behavioral, and emotional disorder that makes it difficult for you to work, socialize, and do other activities. The problems such as family problems, peer problems, and disciplinary problems are among the most dominant problems affecting students' academic achievement. When a person feels such intense mental pressure that it interferes with their activities, they may be suffering from a mental illness. Mental health is a very significant in influencing student academic performance, which is an indicator of the productivity of a student. Therefore, this study can further strengthen the findings that mental health is an important indicator of student performance at the university and deserves attention seriously by various parties. It is kind of said that issues of mental health is not talked about enough among students in the university. Therefore, lecturers must be aware of the negative impact of mental illness on students. The importance of maintaining a good level of mental health, as well as identifying the symptoms of mental health problems that require intervention and treatment. Many students face mental health problems such as anxiety, depression, and stress that affect their abilities to work, maintain relationships, or move on with their life. Mental health is not a contagious disease yet. We often forget that mental health problems involve an emotional burden. We can observe how online lectures influence students, especially new students, by starting with online lectures. Online lectures are usually referred to as online learning or implementation of learning in higher education, which is carried out remotely through platforms or media and is connected to a network. Online lectures certainly have a positive and negative impact on university students. Have more time for doing the tasks during offline lectures. Of course, students are given more assignment by lectures than offline lectures. Difficult to understand the material for students. Providing material during offline lectures is certainly easier to apply and digest by students. However, not a few students only feel the negative impact of online lectures. The negative impact of online lectures can attack students' mentality. If a student only think about the negative impact of online lectures, then students will become stressed and then cause students to have a mental problems.
The latest figures show that the growth of the coronavirus has already started exponentiation. This doubling is what scared the World Health Organization. By calculating the R0 of corona, we find that it ranges between 1.5 and 3.5. Here another question arises. Doesn't it seem like coronavirus only choose the richest countries with this medical care level to mostly spread through more than poor societies? Is the virus choosing the rich countries on purpose, or it would be more logical to assume that the richest countries have higher ability to detect the disease among its citizens? However, now what should we do? Should we just stand idly by? Or actually, people now have two choices. First one, suppression strategy. In the suppression strategy, we will strict hard on the peak of the pandemic to decrease its R value to the lowest possible. To do so, we will follow strict measures to isolate people in their homes, and we will close all schools and business in the country. This way, the health system won't collapse, and we will keep that mortality rate at its minimum value 0.6. This is what China did in Wuhan, as the growth rate was 3.9, then became only 0.32. So what's keeping us from this strategy? It seems effective. The problem is that for it to work, we need to apply full social isolation and complete closure of all activities for more than a year, which would destroy the economy, both in rich and poor countries alike. The second strategy to be followed in many countries is the modified supervision strategy, suggested in the report of the Imperial College to reduce COVID-19 mortality and healthcare demand. In this strategy, we have two phases: a phase of strict supervision followed by a mitigation phase. The strict supervision of the virus will be by strict isolation measures, so that the growth rate of the corona or the virus would become less than 1 and almost 0. If we manage to do so, the second part of the plan will start. By mastery returning to normal life, but not entirely in the same normal way. At this phase, strict measure of sanitation will be followed with people, in addition to expanding the scope of medical tests, tracking infected cases and restricting travel and gatherings. But mostly people will go back to work and the economy will return to normal course. At this phase, the virus growth rate doesn't have to be almost 0, but it should remain somehow below 1.